what a nice essay you've got there. It'd be a real shame if someone would have come along and grade it. But of course, in contrast to popular belief, teachers aren't waiting around like mobsters in a film in an alley wanting to club your essay over the head and rummage through it looking for all the mistakes. I want you to have the best essay possible. So I'm going to go through the rubric that I use to grade, because grading isn't really all that scary. You can actually do it yourself to make sure that you're going to get a good grade before I grade it. So we're going to look at how and why you should use the rubric to look at your own essay and figure out whether it's right or not. So just to go over some of the basic parts of the rubric, all right, each slide on the rubric has 4 possible grades. The more detail you have that you're supposed to, the higher the grade on that section. What I'm going to be doing is averaging together all the grades, which means I will add up each section, the points that you got on it, and divide them by the number of sections, which will give me a grade that is somewhere between, most likely 70 and 100 for your essay, okay? If you have all your sections. If you're missing a section, it's a 0, and that changes things, so don't leave out a section. All right, so we're looking at this right now, all right, and each section lists 3 basic requirements that you need to have in your paragraph, okay? Looking at the introduction, the 3 basic requirements for your introduction are a clever or thoughtful hook, details explaining the 2 topics, and a clear main idea. So let's look at my essay, my example essay, and see, do I have all those things? And we're going to highlight light green for our hook, purple for our 2 topics explained, and blue for our main idea, where we state why we're comparing and contrasting, or what we see when we compare and contrast the 2 things. All right, so first I start off with, what difference can one person make? It's a question many ask themselves. We know this is a hook because it's a question. It's asking the reader to consider something before I actually talk to them about my topics. That's a hook. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in my light green color, or neon green, perhaps you could say, right? Because that is what I highlighted my hook in. You can go through and highlight your essay too. You can even leave it highlighted when you turn it in. I don't mind, okay? Because it shows me that you're using the rubric and checking your own work, taking accountability for getting things right. All right, the next sentence is, say, 2 well-known people who fought to make a difference are Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malala Yousafzai. All right, they are explained in those sentences who they are. Then it says they lived in different times and fought for different causes. So right there I have my background information about my 2 people. I explained who they were, at least a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in my light purple, like on my rubric. So it looks like I'm well on my way to having my 100. All right, now my last thing needs to be a clear main idea. However, as in however, even though they lived in different times and fought for different causes, they both showed that it is possible for one person to stand up and make a difference. Now that's what I intend to show through my whole essay, so this is my main idea. All of my paragraphs are going to connect to the idea that they were standing up to make a difference as one individual. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in my light blue because that's my main idea. I have everything I'm supposed to have. That means that when I grade this and when you're looking at it, you should recognize, oh, that's 100. Good. All right, we can move on. We're going to look at another good example before we move on to examples of things that would need to be fixed. All right, so looking at the next paragraph, do I have everything I'm supposed to have? Now, my body paragraphs have different requirements. They're going to start with a main idea for just that paragraph. I'm going to state what I'm talking about for the whole paragraph in one clear sentence. Within the paragraph, I'm going to use at least 2 compare and contrast words. All your compare and contrast words are on the last slide with examples of how to use them. Please make use of this because it's there so that you can use the words correctly. Don't use the words incorrectly when you have examples of how to use them correctly. Okay? So you're going to be looking at this, going, okay, I have 2 compare and contrast words, and finally, I use specific vocabulary words. That just means you use words related to the topic you're talking about. If you're talking about basketball players, rather than saying he's a good player, he can do things, right? You'd say like, he has good skills such as shooting and dribbling. Use the words related to your topic so the person knows what you're talking about. Mine, I was talking about racist and unfair treatment, so words like segregated, terrorism, right, racism, sexism, all those types of words would fit in because they're related to what I'm talking about, unfair treatment, unfair laws. All right, so looking at my essay in my body paragraphs, I'm going to start by going, do I have a main idea? If I do, I'm going to highlight it in blue. Well, it says Dr. King and Malala both fought against unfair laws. According to the rest of the paragraph, it talks about the unfair laws, racist laws that segregated, laws that said girls were not allowed to go to school. So yes, in fact, I have my main idea. Do I use at least 2 compare and contrast words? Well, starting off, I know that both is a compare and contrast word. It compares 2 things or 2 people. Okay. I also know that while can be used to contrast. Okay. It shows a contrast between 2 people. While Malala was not born in America, Dr. King was, she was not. In Pakistan, there's a compare word, unfair laws. So I know I have 3 already. Then my specific vocabulary words, racist, because that describes the law accurately, segregated, because that is in fact the term for separating people by some difference legally. Okay, so that is what we are looking at. Everything that's supposed to be there is there. So again, I've gotten my 100 in that section. Now you might be asking yourself, well, what happens if I don't have everything? We're going to look at that in the next paragraph right now. Okay, so again, same requirements in every body paragraph. You need to have all 3 of these things. So looking at this next body paragraph, okay, we have Dr. King and Malala worked to change things as activists. For example, Dr. King led the Montgomery bus boycotts to change rules that didn't allow blacks and whites to ride together. They were threatened for trying to change things. Dr. King didn't let that stop him. Malala didn't let that stop her. Now, I see here that I have a main idea. So I've got one thing that I'm supposed to have. Main idea summing up the whole paragraph, because it's both about how they worked as activists. Okay, I've got my specific details like boycotts. Okay, boycotts is an important word for talking about social change. Threatened, because that's what people did. The thing is that I seem to be missing something. I don't, hopefully you realize, I don't have any compare and contrast words at all in this essay, or in this paragraph. And some of you did the same thing. You had paragraphs where you didn't have any compare and contrast words. So I need to go through and add those, which I'll do in a moment. Okay, so looking at that, I'm going to look and see where could I add things. So I said both here, so I'm going to use a word like both. I'm going to say each worked. Okay, Dr. King and Malala each worked means basically the same as both. Okay, but I use it after rather than before. Okay, so there's one. For example, Dr. King led the Montgomery bus boycotts to change rules that didn't allow blacks and whites to ride together. They were threatened for trying to change things. Okay, Dr. King didn't let that stop him. Malala didn't let that stop her. Now, a couple of things that I'm realizing here. Okay, they were threatened. How about they were each threatened or they were both threatened, right? I could say that. Okay, and then this says Dr. King didn't let that stop him. Malala didn't let that stop her. I could combine that into one sentence by saying neither Dr. King nor Malala let that stop them. And then I have my compare and contrast word, neither and nor. Okay, which fixes my problem of not having compare and contrast words and makes my writing better because it combined something that should have been one sentence from 2 sentences. The other thing this paragraph is missing, and this happened in some of your essays too, I mentioned what Dr. King did, but I didn't say what Malala did. So I'm going to have to add a detail saying what Malala did, but it's in contrast. So on the other hand could be a good contrast phrase. On the other hand, because she didn't have bus boycotts, Malala spoke to raise money for girls' schools. Okay, that's what she did because she was facing a different problem. You should say on the other hand, there we go. Right, now, that has added everything I was supposed to have for my essay. Now see, having checked the rubric, I know that things were missing, so I can add them back in.